It used to be that Manchester City used to be the team that started very slow and ended fast. But sometimes they ended fast and it wasn't enough. It used to be that in the Champions League, they used to go out quickly. But it is looking like now City under Pep Guardiola are looking like the real deal. Yesterday, in a game that was rearranged because of inclement weather on Tuesday, they were able to sweep aside Borussia Mönchengladbach, and it really announced the Pep Guardiola era in the Champions League. And that win made sure that it was 7 wins out of 7 for the Catalan, and the City era under Guardiola has really started. Let's go into it a bit. What perception we had about Pep before he came to England and whether he's fulfilling it, and also about that little detail about the Man City fans having a feud with the Champions League and bowing their anthem. We go now to the UK to speak to Richard Parr. You may know his face when you see him from Sky Sports, but also for Al Jazeera as well. Richard, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Fantastic. Now, the interesting thing about Pep Guardiola is that there's always a perception about him that, you know, he is somebody who has detail, who pays attention to detail, and also that he's someone who is a bit of a control freak. What has been the reality so far?
Weekend, but of course there's a lot of really good teams this season in the Premier League. Chelsea've got a really good squad. Liverpool are looking good with Sadio Mane. You've got Arsenal always there. Spurs are looking good. So there's a lot of tests to come. You know, beating Stoke was a good result. Beating West Ham was a good result, but they're not really the big guns of the English Premier League, Gary.
They're not really the big guns as well. We've talked about the perception. We've talked about the reality. Now, about Manchester City fans being angry with the Champions League. Can you give us a bit of perspective as to why they are doing this? And really, should they?
Well, you know, Manchester City in the last few years have outlaid a lot of money on their team. And because of that, they broke the financial fair play rules. And in 2014, UEFA handed them a punishment of £40 million. And the fans of Man City thought that was really out of order. In the end, Man City only paid a third of that. And also one of their punishments was their squad in the UEFA Champions League was down to 21. And they didn't perform very well during the Champions League then. But what you've seen in the matches, whenever Man City play now, the fans are booing the UEFA Champions League anthem.
Yeah.
And it's becoming quite a distraction to the people watching at home, but also the players on the pitch. And as Guardiola said in his post-match press conference after last night's win over Mönchengladbach, he said they really need to just concentrate on supporting the team and helping the team. Now, if you look at last night's games, Club Brugge were beaten 3-0 by the debutants Leicester City. And actually, Claudio Ranieri said Riyad Mahrez, who scored 2 of the goals, he was actually excited by the music of the Champions League. It gave him the energy. That's what made him score his 2 goals. And Manchester City could be doing with a little bit of that. But when you talk about Pep Guardiola talking about the fans, you know, he's been at a stadium with 100,000 people every week at Barcelona, 75,000 at Bayern Munich, but it's only 60,000 at Manchester City. And I wonder how many of those fans didn't come because the game was supposed to be on Tuesday, but it was waterlogged. So there were probably some fans who weren't there, Gary.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, speaking of Pep and his style as well, let's look into the future. We know that, like, you know, a guy who has been looking for his woman for many years and been dogged, Manchester City have kept it and kept looking for him for 3 years. Finally, they have their man. Do you have a sense that they are looking for the results now? Are they going to sack Pep if he doesn't win the Champions League now? Or they are willing to give him some rope for a couple of years?
Well, Bayern Munich didn't sack him, and he took over at Bayern Munich when they won the treble. And all he did at Bayern Munich was win the league and a few cups. He never won the Champions League. You know, they have got a longer-term plan. I think when you get Pep Guardiola, you don't just give him 1 season. You give him that breathing room of 2-3 years. But let's say they ended this season without the Premier League, without the Champions League, without the FA Cup. There'd be massive questions asked. They have spent so much money on players this summer. Leroy Sané, Ilkay Gundogan, Nolito, just to name a few of them. John Stones. They've got so many players, and they need to turn that money into results. Now they're doing well with financial fair play. Now they're within the rules of UEFA. They need to turn that into results. Whether they'll do it this year, I'm not sure. I think we'll have a better idea of how good they're going to be in Europe when they face Barcelona in the group stages.
Fantastic. And that game against Barcelona, the first leg will be in Spain on the 19th of October, and then the second leg will be on the 1st of November. Two tantalizing games, which brings me to the question of styles. Is he doing a copy and paste, or is he attempting to do a copy and paste of the tiki-taka to Man City? And so far, is he getting results with it? And do you think he can do a copy and paste of tiki-taka?
I don't think it's quite tiki-taka, because I don't think he's got the right players for it. If you look at some of the players he's got Raheem Sterling, very fast. Kevin De Bruyne's pretty fast. Nolito kind of cuts in on the wings. The one player he's got the most similar to that was David Silva, but David Silva didn't even play last night, and they won 4-0. So, yes, he likes to build it up slowly from the back. That's why he got rid of Joe Hart, brought in Claudio Bravo, and they want to do passing from the back and try and build everything like that. And, yes, he wants to do the pressing style like he did with Bayern Munich and Barcelona. But I don't necessarily think it's tiki-taka, so to speak. Keep the ball as much as possible. You know, the game, I think it was against West Ham, they had so much possession. But it's a matter of whether they can convert it. And right now they are. It's just also, can they keep the goals out?
And finally, I wanted to leave the best for last. My host of the show, Francis Aban, was asking, or he was rather saying that Jose Mourinho has come to England at a bad time again because Pep Guardiola is there. Do you think that in the minds of fans, Premier League fans, Jose is being upstaged, at least in the first few games, by Pep Guardiola?
Well, he lost. He lost to Pep Guardiola. He lost 2-1. What more can you say? Results speak for themselves. You know, the thing about Mourinho, he spent so many years in England. Like, when he first came in, he was the special one. He was a breath of fresh air, and we were so happy with the team they played. I remember when they had Robben and Duff and Drogba, and they were really exciting to watch. And you've seen throughout the years as teams have developed, the team which won the Champions League with Inter Milan, they were so negative, they were so boring. And his teams with Real Madrid in those El Clasico games with Pep Guardiola, they weren't very attractive either. And he came back to Chelsea and he said, I'm the happy one, I'm the happy one. But how long did that last? It lasted 2 seasons. They won the Champions League. And I think what happened last year, with everything to do with Eva Canero, everything to do with the way Chelsea just completely plummeted from being champions to a team at one stage fighting relegation, you know, the way he dealt with that, I don't think fans and the media really appreciated it. I don't think they really liked it. And right now, I think he's not really that well liked as he once was, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And Pep Guardiola comes across as such a nice guy. And he's the kind of guy you think, oh, I could go and have a coffee with him and talk football and talk tactics and everything like that. Well, you think if you saw Jose Mourinho, he'd just turn his back on you. Again,
Yeah.
I don't know it for these guys, but that's the impression both of them are giving.
Impressions are everything, aren't they, in the big moneyed world of the Premier League and European football. Thank you very much, Richard Parr. Although I'm not sure Zlatan Ibrahimovic and some other players like Samuel Eto'o would like to have coffee with Pep Guardiola.
I'm sure they would.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure having you. Richard Parr is around for the European expert analysis today. Today it's on Pep Guardiola. Another time we'll do more. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Gary L. Smith. We'll see you later, and keep the conversation on our social media platforms.